Hey, how you doing?
Hey, doing alright.
Okay, so I have this tier maker all set up. We're using
Oh, let's go. Are the
Joshua's
tier
template.
makers public?
Yeah, this one was just from Joshua. I think he uploaded
Oh,
everything. I was in the process of getting them together, but he beat me to it and did it better anyway.
Cool.
So the first one we got here is Ancient Sarcophagus.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Is there like a screen share or something?
Oh, I can do that. Do that. 1 second.
I can also just open your stream and be a little delayed. I have it paused right now.
My screen. This
Whoa.
should be working.
Ancient Sarcophagus.
Yeah, level 3 treasures are really weird. There's a lot of really narrow but really powerful treasures, so it's gonna be hard to like put these on a.
Yeah, a lot of them are really narrow but really powerful, but I think Ancient Sarcophagus is like not narrow enough to where it's like so powerful it usually just converts you to being an Ancient Sarcophagus gamer.
Especially early on, right? Like, it's really hard to deal with an Ancient Sarc before, like, level 5, level 6. Fairy Godmother boards can sort of do it because they gain so much health, but aside from that, like, boards just don't have enough health to deal with Wolf in Sheep's
There are
Clothing.
also just so many heroes where Ancient Sarc is literally like the best treasure.
Yeah, like Celestial Tiger,
Like,
you get doubled
Yeah,
Ancient Sarc triggers.
like I would probably put it solidly in A. I don't think it's quite S tier, just because of the like slight situation on this. But it honestly could be. It's definitely closer to S than B.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I'm just looking over the rest of these treasures to see if there's anything that would maybe leapfrog that, but I think I like putting it in A. I think there's enough other things that want to go in S that putting this A instead of S just to make the chart look a little better.
I'm curious what you think is better than Sark, because I think it's pretty limited out of these, but we'll see.
I think there's
Could be forgetting
3
some.
that are solidly better than Sark.
Yeah,
But-
we'll see then.
Yeah. So next up we've got Bad Moon. When one of your characters triggers a slay ability, give it +1/+2. Bad Moon's a weird one for me. It's really good when I'm in Sadrak, obviously, but outside of Sadrak, I don't know if I've ever taken this thing.
Yeah, Bad Moon is weird. I've heard from Asig, apparently it's really good on Trophy Hunter as well.
I could see that.
Like, the Slay treasures are all miserable to rate.
I think it's worse than Cloak, because at least with Cloak, sometimes you take it to trigger your like Brave Princess or Adventurer.
But in actual Slay comps, like, Bad Moon is so much better than Cloak.
Yeah.
Like, if you get Cloak super early and the tempo's actually relevant, then, like, maybe it's comparable. But, like, the vast majority of the time you're looking for Bad Moon, not Cloak, as Slay.
Yeah, like Bad Moon plus Lightning Dragon even.
It almost feels like there needs to be like a separate Slay tier just for like dumping the Slay treasures into.
Yeah, Bounty Board is the same way.
Even Slay itself is hard to rate, like, right? Because like neither of us like it, but like I see some other players go for it a lot.
Yeah, I lost to it in the tournament. Like some really cheeky Slay build with like Lancelot and Shadow Assassins.
Yeah.
Like, it definitely gets there sometimes. It's just, when it doesn't get there, it feels so bad. I think I want to put this in... Looking at the rest of these treasures, I want to put it in F, just so something goes in F, but...
There's no way, like, I don't think F is fair for a treasure with that potential. I would put it maybe in D if you're trying to generalize it.
That's fair. Is anything going in F, though? I guess...
I think you could put the Cloak in F, honestly. I think it's trolling when you take Cloak for Adventurer.
Really?
It's just Bad Moon without the potential, in my opinion.
I mean, it's Bad Moon without the potential, but it gets you, like, an experience, roughly. I'm not saying that I'm ever really happy taking Cloak for Adventure. Like, you'd always rather have Sting.
Yeah, maybe.
But when the picks are, like, Bad Moon, Crystal Ball on a hero that doesn't want to go Hat Ball, and Cloak of the Assassin, I'm happy to take the Cloak instead of Skip.
Yeah, it's true. I can see that.
That said, I wouldn't put it like significantly above Bad Moon. It would probably be like C or D, but I'm happy putting it in D next to the Bad Moon.
I'm cool with D. I think you can make a case for D.
Now, how about Crystal Ball? This one, it's really good when you have Hat. And it's good with like Aeon if your Aeon is getting slays.
Crystal Ball is really weird to rate. Honestly, the more I play it, I think the more I gain respect for it as just a standalone treasure. I honestly think, like, if you're playing like Merlin, I would just first pick this thing most of the time.
Yeah, I get that. I feel like every time that I end up taking Crystal Ball without some way to reduce costs, though, I either end up not making use of the ball at all, or trapping myself into trying to get use of the ball and just immediately dying because it's not enough stats.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the risk. Like, usually you want to have at least 1 point of synergy, and then you don't want to be hard investing in ball until you have at least 2.
Yeah.
Like, it's important to, like, it is important to get more upgrades. Like, it's very difficult to, like, get mileage out of the ball, to the point where you're justifying the ball existing, but simultaneously not just be in ball for the rest of the game.
Yeah,
but, like, some heroes can pretty much get away with being in ball for the rest of the game. Like, if you're on Potion Master, if you find a Crystal Ball, you're fine.
That's true. On Potion Master especially, just being able to chain off spells even if you're paying for them does seem worth it. This definitely enables the spell builds. Like, just Merlin's Hat doesn't.
Yeah.
But being able to cast multiple spells in one turn, Crystal Ball is the only thing that lets you do that.
Like, I feel like Crystal Ball is just a strong enough treasure and, like, has enough of an identity to it, and it's, like, pickable often enough that I would put it in B. It's definitely more situational than Sarc. It's not like Sarc tier, probably.
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
I don't think it's fair to call it nearly average.
Yeah, I think it's definitely above average. It maybe would be average if, like, getting cost reduction plus Crystal Ball wasn't such a strong endgame strategy, but because the baseline on it is still, like, just good enough, and you still have those high rolls of getting the hat later or getting, like, an Aeon that's getting slays somewhat reliably every turn, I think I like putting it in B.
Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, that's the strength of balls. It's not actively weighing you down. It will get some value.
Even just, like, Crystal Ball plus the consume plus 2 gold does feel relevant from time to time in the late game.
Yeah, Kraken in the end are big buffs to Crystal Ball for sure. Like, those are, like, the things you want to be balling the most. And TLK.
Yeah.
Like, there's just enough spells that can get you value that it's not... It's probably, like, a C tier level powers, like, treasure on 3 with, like, A tier level build potential.
Yeah.
So, like, from that perspective, I think B makes sense.
I get that. Okay, how about Deepstone Mine? This is another kind of weird one. When you're in Dwarves, it's pretty solid. Getting +2/+2 on the whole team, +4/+4 on the doublies. Definitely relevant. Completely useless when you're not heavy in Dwarfs, though.
Yeah. To me, this feels like a flat C.
Flat C,
like,
yeah.
It doesn't really strike me as, like, an essential part of Dwarves. I think the only thing about Deepstone Mine that's maybe worth noting is that when I find it, I, like, am very slightly more biased towards actually finishing out my Dwarves instead of just transitioning at 6.
That's fair. Like, how often do you find yourself keeping Deepstone?
I'm still not very excited.
Yeah, I feel like by the time I'm getting to 6, that's usually when I want to be replacing this Deepstone Mine anyway with something better.
Yeah, that's also true. To be fair, I do like Doubly more than you do as, like, a mid-game unit.
I like it when I have Deepstone Mine.
I buy enough fannies and bossies that it's just, like, fine.
Sure.
And it's like, you know, if you get a Triply and an early Lordy, it's actually an avenue for going Dwarves. It's, like, somewhat reasonable.
Yeah, I think Deepstone Mine's a perfect C tier. I think it's a little better than the Slay Treasures, just because the archetype that it's supporting is a little bit more powerful. Yeah, you're more likely to be in it. Princess Wipe giving you potential for Deepstone Mine on pretty good curve, too, is relevant as well. Next up, Eye of Ares. I used to be really high on Eye of Ares, but lately, I don't know if I've picked it in the last 2 weeks.
It's sometimes decent. Like, it's a little too sometimes decent for it to be, like, F. But there's no way you can give it better than a D, just because it's, like, a symmetrical treasure already means that half the time it's benefiting your opponent more than you, like, just in a vacuum.
Well, ideally,
so, like,
you're picking units.
It's already situational.
Yeah.
And then you can only get so much payoff out of building around it. And, like, it's a lot of times, like, you don't know what your opponent's got. Your opponent could easily just have a more synergistic board without Eye of Ares. Like, 4 Eye of Ares than you.
Yeah.
And you can just, like, the bad fights are really bad.
Yeah, Dwarves have stuff like Tweedledee, a lot of random boards with, like, Godmother or Sliding in Peep. And the Godmother, like, the Eye of Ares isn't even enough attack to invalidate the Godmother health.
I'm willing to take Eye of Ares on. On any other board, I usually just shy away from Eye of Ares. I think Godmother gets enough value out of it that it's like pickable if you don't see another good 3.
Yeah, I could see that. The problem there is, like, the endgame board that wants to have Ivaries is Pumpkin, right? Like, it's really nice with Pumpkin giving +5 attack to all your stuff that's replaceable.
Sometimes with summons, or if I'm against,
Sure.
if I'm going up against like a skip or something that I expect to just have bigger units than me, every now and then I'll just sort of like take it for tempo, especially if my board is okay with it and I can remove it.
Yeah, so I guess if you're in Godmother planning to potentially pivot into Bearstein, Ivaries can make sense throughout the whole game. But it's one of those treasures you take and then hope that you get to stay in and then it stays relevant throughout the whole game.
It's a little better on Tiger. On Tiger, you can like get more mileage out of it. It's a little better on like heroes that really incentivize summons, like probably like Avella.
Yeah, on Tiger it starts to get big enough where you're actually invalidating their Godmother too.
You want to use the Ivaries for?
Mm-hmm. I think I like putting it above the Slay Treasures, but not quite.
I would agree with above the Slay Treasures for sure, but I think same tier.
Yeah, I could see it getting moved up to behind Deepstone Mine, but for now...
Just getting moved down and me maybe being too attached to them because I kind of like Sadrek.
Yeah, that's the thing. You just look at the rest of the treasures in the 3s. They're all at least reasonable. Like, I take all of these pretty regularly.
Like Eye is not a Deepstone Mine, but I could see the world where Eye is more than a Slay Treasure by enough that the Slay Treasures should be moved down.
Yeah. Fancy Pants. So this is just pure generic power. Is there much else to this? Like, you pretty much take Fancy Pants.
When you are buying doublies of Friendly Spirits, it's a little worse. Well, it's a lot worse when you're Waddle or when you're like, when you like have a reason to want to hoard things, like you have a Lucky.
Or when you have a habit of picking chickens.
It's a little better when you're buying a ranged unit. It's a little better when you're same turning a Fancy Pants in the middle of a turn and you get the buff immediately. There's like actually a fair bit to talk about like this treasure, but it's also just not very interesting and never particularly amazing.
Fancy Pants tends to be the treasure where I'm not in Dwarves, there's a Deepstone Mine in the pack, and I'm not in Slay and there's a Slay treasure in the pack, but there's a Fancy Pants and it's better than skipping. That's what Fancy Pants feels like to me. It does have some cute synergies with like Friendly Spirit, as you said. It helps your good boy by coming in as a 5 instead of a 3, but for the most part...
It's never essential.
Exactly.
I feel like it's often the treasure I take when I'm trying to thin the ball.
It's like the worst of the generic treasures.
Yeah, I'd put it right above Ivaries, I think.
Yeah, it's like, at least Ivaries is sometimes exciting. Fancy Pants is just Fancy Pants.
Yeah, but Fancy Pants you take way more.
Yeah,
sure.
You definitely take it way more just because it's generic, but the power just isn't on the same level as even the Slay Treasures when they're good.
Yeah.
Haunted Helm. Your first character has +10 health.
This one's really weird.
This is really weird. There's a lot of units that this works really well with. It goes from level 3 treasure into Nutcracker really well. Usually a 20 health Nutcracker early enough is going to be proccing to get your level 4 treasure. Plays really nice with Greedy, plays really nice with Doubly. If you have any way to give like your Doubly some extra attack, having a early like 530.
Forgetting Broccoli. Broccoli is the one I use this with the most, honestly.
Very good on Broccoli as well, for sure. Anything that just scales off of having a higher health total. Or scales the health especially well.
Yeah.
I think there's fewer things that this works really exciting with than something like Sting. Like, there's no Adventurer for Haunted Helm.
For sure.
But the situations where it's good, like, I'll almost always take this over Fancy Pants, regardless of if I have synergy or not.
I definitely agree with that. What's weird about Haunted Helm, it does occasionally grief you.
Yeah,
like, Haunted Helm is sometimes literally worse than Fancy Pants.
I mean, I don't mind slot 2ing Mummy too much. I don't feel like that's too much of a downside.
It disables Mummy. It fucks with your stag really badly. Because you either have to first position the stag and you're not getting the Helm stats, or you're like locked to like the weird stag configuration where it's just gonna get sniped. And I play a lot of stags.
I mean, just slot 1 the Broccoli with the Haunted Helm with 0 tech. Easy.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a Broccoli, it's nice. Like, if you have the synergy, it's really good, but it definitely can bite you really hard as well. And a lot of like units that you want a lot of units you want first attack with don't really give a shit about the health. Like if your Haunted Helm unit's competing with like a Medusa or like a Adventurer or whatever, it's pretty janky.
Yeah, it definitely falls off more than Sting does, I think, going into the level 6.
Personally, I don't think it's quite a B.
I want to put it like right behind Crystal Ball. I take it often enough, and I think it's high enough impact through the early game that I'm just gonna put it a little bit.
I definitely wouldn't fight that. It's like it's right on the fence between B and C.
It also just keeps this graph a little bit more balanced.
Well, we'll see if it does.
We got Merlin's hat. Is this the easiest S so far? You're gonna fight me on that?
I mean, I might fight you on that.
I feel like it's really close to like it's close to 2 gold per turn. Realistically, it's like 1.5 gold per turn. It makes buying XP without having to freeze so much easier. And it does scale into the late game pretty well by just discounting your Pigamorphs, discounting your Shrivels, discounting your Smites.
Yeah. The free spells are kind of nice too, for sure.
It makes any hero able to happily go Hat Ball too. Like, once you have the hat, you can pick the Crystal Ball and you just have a build that you can pivot into easily.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, it's like, I feel like if I saw a hat in a treasure map, I would pick the treasure map almost always. I would honestly put it in high A.
I mean, we haven't gotten to treasure map yet, but are we saying we can only put one thing in S? Because if so, then sure, high A.
I'm saying we should have the things in S be like on the same power level, and I don't think those treasures are on the same power level. I would much more equate it to Sark. Like, I would be much more likely to take a Sark over a hat than a hat over a map. Unless I found,
I
like,
completely agree with you.
The map is poorly timed.
I completely agree with you. It does feel like map should be in its own tier, but yeah, okay, sure, you sold me. I'm putting it above Sark, though.
I think that's fine.
I feel like any treasure that has so much generic power while also potentially enabling like powerful pivots later on by picking up a Crystal Ball.
Yeah, I think another thing to note, now that Aeon exists, you don't need the hat to go Crystal Ball at all.
Yeah, that's fair. It does make it so much easier, though, not needing to rely on a unit to get slays.
I mean, it's a nice treasure.
Power Orb.
Power Orb?
Characters get +1/+1. This is just average, right? It's another, like, similar to Fancy Pants sort of thing.
I'd say it's better than Deepstone Mine by a considerable amount.
I'd agree with that. It's just, you can always take it.
Yeah.
I think it's a tier above Fancy Pants in the same sort of way.
I sometimes would take it over Haunted Helm, honestly. But, like, I guess the Haunted Helm provides more unique opportunities that is probably still a C tier.
Yeah, like the Haunted Helm plus Broccoli, the Haunted Helm plus Greedy, Haunted Helm plus whatever. Yeah. Like, the synergies there make it higher upside than Power Orb, which is just, like, some flat stats across the team. I'm way more excited to take Haunted Helm when I'm excited about Haunted Helm, and my baseline on each of them is about the same as well.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, not a whole lot to say about it. What are your thoughts on Ring of Revenge?
Ring of Revenge is really weird. It's an amazing treasure when it actually, like, when you have the setup for it and you don't get sniped and, like, everything goes well, and I feel like more often than not that doesn't happen.
Yeah, like, it's great with, like, the range supports and tokens.
Average board, like, if you have a Godmother board with, like, Peep, it's kind of insane. If you have, like, a lot of tokeny crap, it can be really good.
Like, it makes Sporko a real unit.
Like, I feel like as a generic stat treasure, I would put it below Power Orb, but there are, like, so many random synergies that if they're real, suddenly this could get into, like, the pretty high upper echelon of treasures.
Yeah, like, one of the big downsides of token builds is you want to play a bunch of supports in order to make your tokens actually have relevant stats. But by having those supports in the backline, you have a bunch of just bricks in your backline. But Ring of Revenge makes those not bricks anymore, and it scales with the amount of tokens that you generate as well. Especially the range supports like Sporko, Lady of the Lake, even Grumblegore later on. Adding an extra, like, 5 attack to your ranged unit isn't nothing.
For sure. It's the weakest treasure to rate, I think, of the ones we rated yet, other than maybe the Slay ones.
Yeah,
because
and, like,
it's just, like, it's either, like, it can make strategies that I think are otherwise kind of unexciting feel really good. But, like, if you're just playing sort of, like, generically powerful stuff that can't really make use of it, it's just pretty lackluster. And sometimes even just flat out useless, depending on what you're up against.
Yeah, the base rate on this, when you don't have any tokens, is way worse than Power Orb, right? Like, you're getting 2 for, like, each middle slot, and then 1 on the edges. So instead of getting +7/+7, you're getting +6/+6. That's actually not that much worse.
Wait, it's actually 1/1/1/1. Yeah, 6/6. It's not that much worse. You could argue, like, where it gets worse is that your ranged units could just die.
Yeah, of course. You can get, like, lightning dragons, smited. I want to put it above Power Orb. I think it's around Haunted Helm tier.
Yeah, it's definitely above Power Orb, just for the upside, I think. I'd give it a B.
Yeah, I'll put it above the Helm. I think the upside there, like, enabling support...
Well.
It's good in powerful builds, too. Like, I like being in tokens, generally. And Ring of Revenge enables the tokens. I like being in Godmother, generally, and Ring of Revenge makes the Godmother way better, because that build really wants to have some power in the back line.
For sure.
Sting.
I'm not in love with those builds, but it's just so good in those builds that it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Sting, your first character.
I think this is the first one we're going to disagree on it quite a bit.
I mean, since we just put Merlin's hat in A, I want to also put it in A. I'm also super high on Adventurer and think that it is the main way to win games. So I'm probably going to be higher on Sting than you. It plays well with so many little things.
I would put it at minimum below Sark, if not in B.
Really?
Yeah.
It plays so well with Adventurer, it plays so well with tokens, it plays so well into Good Boy. It enables your Doom Breath when you get to 6. Like, I just feel like there's every build is happy to have a Sting. And it always feels high impact. And then there's the I win the game potential of, like, your adventurers getting more slays.
A lot of times, my experience with Sting is I end up putting in some garbage unit to try to get 20 attack instead of 10 out of the Sting. And at that point, I'm just like, why don't I just have a Power Orb so I can play my better unit? Because, like, 7/7 versus, like, 20/0, when you're forced to run, like, a Sure Shot or a Cat or whatever nonsense, is, like, not particularly amazing. First Slot Adventurer can still just break if they have a Ring of Meteors, or you don't have the proper support for it, and you don't have the proper support for it.
I mean...
I also just really like Stag Adventurer, which is, like, not a thing Sting can support. Grimsoul Adventurer also breaks, like, with Sting.
If it was just Adventurer...
I don't think the best ways of adventuring are Sting Adventurer. A lot of times, by the time you get it online, Sting Adventurer is not a guaranteed kill.
I agree with that. But, like, it's not just Adventure. Like, it scales so well later on. Like, so many endgame comps are just happy to have a Sting lying around. Either it enables the Doom Breath, enables your Good Boy to giving more stats to your ranged units. Like, picking a Good Boy on just a good board with no other treasures for it feels kind of bad. Like, just +3/+3 to the team is kind of nothing at that point. But +13/+3 to the team, all of a sudden your ranged units are hitting for a lot. Your Court Wizards are real stats. It's way easier to hit that pivot when you have a Sting.
When Sting is good, it's good. I just don't... I just feel like sometimes you're forcing it to be good. Like,
I feel like it's just always...
I would definitely take the other two A-tier treasures over Sting if I felt like they were accommodating me well, and Sting wasn't. But I guess when Sting is really good, it is really good.
What comp doesn't want to have a Sting going into level 6? Like, what comp are you not like, oh man, this thing isn't doing anything?
There's not really... Like, that's true. The late game units... Weirdly enough, the Sting is almost better late game in a lot of situations. Because, like, Doom Breath... Like, a lot of boards can... Like,
it lets you take stuff out of order.
You can't play either a Doom Breath or a Good Boy.
Yeah, almost every comp wants to be either a Doom Breath or Good Boy. And it just lets you take those out of order. Like, rather than needing the treasure before a Good Boy is good, you already have the treasure. Rather than needing, like, the Grumble Gore before you can take the Doom Breath and have it be relevant. The Doom Breath is relevant as soon as you hit 6. I'm putting this in, like, middle of 8 tier.
Usually I'm willing to take Doom Breath regardless of if it's relevant or not when I hit 6. I've noticed sometimes you're not.
I mean, I'll often take it, but I'm not as happy about it as when I have Sting. Like, I'm acknowledging that I'm taking a risk taking the Doom Breath. Whereas if I'm taking it with the Sting, I don't feel like it's risky at all. Like, it's just good.
Yeah. I can see that. I mean, it is A tier. I think it would probably be disrespectful for it to not be A tier. I do think Sark just is kind of insane.
I agree, but I think Sark falls off a little bit more than Sting.
I really don't. Like, especially when Magic Sword and Singing Sword are treasures that exist. Whereas Sark just offers so much unique value. And, like, is relevant all game.
Yeah. I mean, you do want to replace Sting eventually, but it's just so good at carrying you into those early level 6 turns, which feel the scariest a lot of the time. Like, when everyone's starting to get to 6, everyone's getting a build together, you just want to be, like, the best of the scraps. And Sting helps you be the best of the scraps a lot.
It's fair.
Telltale Quiver. Ranged characters in your back row get +3/+3.
This one's another really weird one.
I take this a lot, but I'm never happy about it. It's one of those things like I have Sporkos lying around and I want them to feel relevant, and I wasn't offered Ring of Rage.
Lot, and when I do, I'm usually okay with it.
Oh, interesting.
Like, I will never spec on this.
Same. It's usually like I'll have 2 supports in my range row that I just need to make my Princess Peeps relevant.
Yeah, I pretty much only take it when I'm in Court Wizard, like point blank period.
Yeah, Court Wizard comes up with a lot too. I don't know.
Like, maybe mages, like Spellweaver stuff. Like, when I have like 2 to 3 ranged units, this treasure's honestly pretty solid. But like, in the average case, I would give it a D.
Yeah,
I honestly think it's pretty bad.
I think it's above the Slay Treasures, but I might just be disrespecting the Slay Treasures.
I would put it above Eye of Ares, but below Fancy Pants.
I could see an argument for that. Yeah, I do take it more than Eye of Ares, even though in the builds that Eye of Ares is good in, Eye of Ares is a little bit more exciting. Like, Eye of Ares also just plays nice with ranged units. There's not a whole lot of difference between +3/+3 to all your ranged units, and Eye of Ares just giving +5 to your ranged units. It's often going to be better.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. Until your opponents also have ranged units, which they often do, because ranged units are usually pretty good.
Yeah. Hey, Gabby, thanks for the raid. Welcome, buddy. We are going over level 3 treasures, and we're almost done with... Yeah, I don't think this is controversial at all. Treasure map is just the best one by far, right?
Yeah. It's not always the best on 3. On 3, I find myself taking Hat, Sting, Sark over it quite often, depending on the hero, Crystal Ball, or even Helm as well.
There's not a level 3 treasure that straight up wins the game in the same way that Treasure Map has the potential to.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, Treasure Map, I think, wins the game better than having Hat Wall does.
Be the reason why 3s just feel so comparable to 4s in terms of power level.
Treasure Map is the reason...
A lot of these 3s are great, but like most of the 4s are like comparable enough to them. Treasure Map you'd just rather have over like almost every 4.
Yeah. Treasure Map is the reason why I'm not super low on Horde Dragon. Like, just the only reason. If Treasure Map didn't exist, Horde Dragon is like...
It'd be really nasty for Tiger too. Like, Tiger would at least have some backup plans, but it would still be miserable to play Tiger without Treasure Map.
Yeah, just not even being able to have access to the level 7 pool, but just being able to access 5s and 6s early. Having an early Monkey Paw is so gross.
Yeah, early Paw, early Owl, early Embiggening. Like, there's so much dumb shit you can do with this. Even early Wand. Early Wand can cheese XP really hard. And, like, you get a lot of time to cast spells and set up for getting other treasures.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. But yeah, that's the level 3 pool. I'm pretty happy with how this looks. I feel like for symmetry's sake, I want to move the Slay Treasures down, but I also just like have to acknowledge that I am very biased against Slay.
No, I mean, it's your tier list. I think that's fine. I think compared to the other treasures, like, I probably play them in F tier amount. It's kind of fair to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just weird to rate treasures, because it's not just about pick rate, too. It is about impact on the game when you do pick them. And Bad Moon definitely has a high impact when you do pick it a lot of the time.
For sure. But I've also just hit the skip button a lot thanks to these asshole treasures, man.
Yeah, sometimes you just see, like, Bad Moon, Cloak of the Assassin, Deepstone Mine, and you were nowhere near Dwarves.
Yeah, we should just rename it from F tier to Slay tier. There we go. We got it. That's like...
There we go.
I like it.
Great. Okay, well, I guess we can go back to playing games now. It's been fun being joined by you for this treasure review. Maybe we'll do more of these in the future.
I need to boot up Storybook again so that I can snipe you.